So, Bob, my friends, I hope this finds you well. So, if you're a long-time viewer of the channel, one thing you will know about me by now is that I love boxing. And today's gospel gives us a glimpse of a true heavyweight bout. You see, in the one corner, we have the Roman Empire, represented by their governor, Pontius Pilate. In the other corner, we have Jesus of Nazareth, a man who's on trial for his very life. And yet, unbeknownst to Pilate, unbeknownst to the Roman Empire, the man on trial is the true king. He is the sovereign ruler of all, whose reign will stretch far, far, far beyond the temporal boundaries of this world. And so Pilate asks the question, he says, "Are you king of the Jews?" This question is rooted in misunderstanding. You see, Pilate is looking at Jesus through a lens of political power, of worldly authority. There are a few sort of ways that we can look at the character of Pontius Pilate. In some instances, he's quite a sympathetic character. He's a man just trying to keep the peace, a man working for an empire that was not above replacing someone if they didn't do their job properly. And there's other sides that you can read it, that you could see Pilate as a politician, a man scheming for more power, a man who quite happily and quite willingly, politically, jumped into bed with the high priest Caiaphas in order to prolong and to better his career. How you see Pilate is entirely up to you. But at his core, beneath all of the rest of it, Pontius Pilate is a soldier. He thinks of kingship in terms of control, in terms of armies, dominion over land, of absorbing cultures into the empire. And Jesus' answer it's surprising. It's even, to a degree, revolutionary. Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." Jesus makes it clear that his kingdom does not operate in the same sort of parameters that Pilate is familiar with. Jesus' kingdom is not about political power. It's not about military conquest. It's not about ruling with force or with oppression. It's about ruling with truth and with love. Then the kingdoms of this world, they're often built on power, on violence, on manipulation. But Christ's kingdom, it's built on the foundation of divine truth and sacrificial love. And so what does that mean for us as citizens of the world? Well, we're tempted to define kingship and success by the standards of power, of wealth, of influence. But Jesus challenges us to reimagine what it is to be a part of that kingdom. You see, Jesus' rule is not about getting ahead or gaining control in life. It's about submitting to a different kind of authority. It's about putting our trust in the authority of truth, of justice, and of peace. It's about placing an emphasis on each other, on love, on affirmation, and on hope. And as Christians, we belong to a kingdom that's not defined by borders, or armies, or rulers in the way that this world thinks. We acknowledge Christ as King. We declare our allegiance to a kingdom that transcends all kinds of earthly, temporal powers. A kingdom that transcends colour, socio-economic status, ability level, sexuality, age, all of the things that society uses to divide us, to pigeonhole us. Christ's kingdom runs through them all. The only requirements to be a citizen of Christ's kingdom is to acknowledge him as Saviour and Lord and to walk in love. That's it. That's the great mystery. And the fact is, my friends, that we live in the United Kingdom, and whatever my thoughts on Welsh independence are, the head of this particular power is King Charles. Now, I'm not a betting man, really, but I will put money on the fact that he probably doesn't know my name. And I'm fairly certain he and I will never be in the same room. Jesus knows my name. I stand before Jesus every single day. He knows your name, and you stand with him every single day. You see, my friends, that's the difference between Christ's kingdom and earthly powers. And I always imagine, go back to the gospel, I always imagine Pilate's confusion growing here. I always imagine Pilate sort of frowning a little bit, maybe even furrowing the brow. And what is truth? That line is arguably one of the most tragic in all of Scripture. Because Pilate asks the question, what is truth? But he stood there with truth right in front of him. And yet he remains completely and totally blind to it. He has Jesus right there. The truth is in front of him. And he just doesn't see it. Jesus, the King, declares that he came to the world to testify to the truth. And everyone who belongs to the truth belongs to him. What is the truth? What is truth? Pilate asks that question. And often, we humans, we ask that question. What is truth? Well, in this instance, the truth is that Jesus is the embodiment of God's kingdom. He's the embodiment of a kingdom that reigns in righteousness, in mercy, in grace, where saints and sinners sit at the same table, where all who are truly penitent are forgiven, where things like I mentioned earlier, race, class, none of that matters. And the truth is, friends, that Jesus came not to impose his rule with force. He could have done. He very much could have done. Jesus could have rallied an army very, very easily. Satan even tempts him with this in the desert. Satan says to him, listen, don't bother with this sacrificing lark. What's the point? You've got godlike power. You're the embodiment of the creator of everything. Just take the gaff over. Which of us wouldn't be tempted by that when the alternative was death on the cross? But Jesus does not come to rule in force. Instead, he comes to offer himself as the sacrifice to redeem the world. A world that he redeems with his own life. And the truth is that his reign is not established by military conquest. That sacrificial death on the cross, a death that we've gone through before, my friends, it wasn't quick, it wasn't gentle, and it certainly wasn't bloody painless. It was a sacrifice in the truest sense of the word. Jesus' kingdom is not about worldly success. We've said it just, and we'll say it again. Jesus' kingdom is about humility. It's about service. It's about being ready to lay down one's life for others. Of course, that does mean in both the literal sense and the figurative sense. When Jesus talks about laying one's life down for one's friends, he actually does mean being ready to be martyred. But also, he means being ready to put ourselves second. Let's say, for example, I really, really want these painting goggles. That'll cost me £5. My friend Claude, who I've talked about before, homeless Claude, I made him up, he's not real. Claude, the meal deal, £5. I can feed Claude or I can have my goggles. When Christ says to lay down your life for others, he's telling me, buy Claude the damn meal deal. And those things, those loving our enemies and forgiving sins, those things that we just talked about, I know they're hard, friends. I know they are. I struggle with them too. Believe it or not, me. I know. But I struggle with them too. But then, that's why we choose to be a part of Christ's kingdom. We choose to be ambassadors for Christ's kingdom because we want to forgive, because we want to walk in love, because we want to be better. And the fact is that the very cross where Jesus is sent to die is the throne from which he reigns. It's a paradox, I know. When I was writing this, I thought, well, this is a bit dodgy. But it's true, it's a paradox. But Jesus models a style of kingship that is servant-hearted. Jesus is the king who washed his followers' feet. He fed the hungry. He defended the weak. He welcomed the shunned, the sinners. He even welcomed his own betrayer to his table. Let's see any earthly monarch behave like that. For Pilate and many others, even now, the truth is elusive. The reality of Christ's kingship is difficult to grasp, I know. But the kingdom of Christ is alive and it's present in the world today. It's the kingdom of justice, of mercy, of truth, of peace. A kingdom that will ultimately triumph over all other kingdoms, because it's a kingdom that lives in the hearts of every single person who acknowledges Christ as Lord and who chooses to live as the gospel. So, what does this mean for us? As followers of Christ, to live under his kingship. If his kingdom is not of this world, then how do we as Christians live as citizens of his kingdom while still being a part of the world? You, me, we are still in the world. So how do we live as citizens of Christ's kingdom in that world? Well, we have to be prepared to embrace the truth that Jesus proclaims. You see, friends, we're called to speak truth to power. We're called to be truth bearers in a world that is often lost in confusion, deception, and division. And that's not always the popular thing to do. But the truth is, friends, Christ's kingdom, it's a kingdom of love. We've just said this. It's a kingdom of love. It's a kingdom of grace. It's a kingdom of redemption. I know. It's a kingdom where every single person who sits there and says, I'm not good enough. Why is Jesus bothering with me? I don't matter. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's a kingdom that transforms lives. It's a kingdom that calls us to live as representatives of our own King, to be representatives of Christ here on earth, to model the gospel, to love our neighbours, to forgive our enemies, to be agents of reconciliation, to bring peace and hope wherever we go, to not waste money on these things and instead to die to our own desires and to feed Claude. In a world that pushes division more and more, and a world that is often apathetic to, and at worst, hostile to, that way of living, to the gospel, and indeed to Christ himself, we are called, and this time has never been more vital, that we live as ambassadors to the kingdom, that we model that truth, that justice, that peace, and that love. We're called to serve under Christ's rule. Jesus once told the disciples, he said to them, the greatest among you will be your servant. The kingdom of Christ is not about self-promotion. The kingdom of Christ is not about our own glory. It's not about being thought of as the great person. And I know there's a lot of people that do that. It's not about ego. It's not about survival of the fittest. It's about serving others. It's about putting their needs before our own. It's about reflecting Christ's sacrificial love in all that we do. And of course, we have to remember that the kingdom of Christ is eternal. And of course, we live in a world that is battered by suffering, is battered by injustice and uncertainty. We are a part of a kingdom that never fades. We are part of a kingdom that is everlasting. Christ's reign will always be. He promises that one day he will return to fully establish his kingdom. And then every knee will bow and every tongue will confess the name Jesus Christ, and they will call him Lord. And so, friends, as we've gathered here to celebrate Christ the King, let's reflect on the nature of his kingship. He's not a king who rules by force, by deception, by money, but he rules by love, by truth, by sacrificial love and service. His kingdom is not of this world, but it presents among us and helps us to transform lives. It presents among us and helps us to transform hearts. It transforms us. I say that having gone on that very transformative journey myself. There was a beginning, and here I am now. Radically different places. So friends, what I would say is this: let's bow before the King who reigns from the cross, whose kingdom is not marked by the power of armies or by the might of empires, but whose kingdom is marked by the truth and the love that his followers carry in this world. Let's live as faithful citizens of that kingdom. Let's bear witness to the truth. Let's serve, support, and love one another every single chance we're given. And if that does not come back to us, we move on. My friends, let us await with hope the return of our King, who will make all things new when he returns. I hope you enjoyed our little reflection on Christ the King today, my friends. As always, the email address will be down here. I can never remember which side of the screen it's on, but it'll be down here. Do get in touch via the address if you need anything, if you'd like to mention anything, if you'd like to ask me something, please do. And all that remains for me to say is, hopefully you can't hear the rain too bad. It's absolutely bucketed it down today. Hopefully it hasn't interfered with the sound too much. If it has, I'll have to go back to the microphone, that's all. See, in my office, normally I think I don't need the microphone. Perhaps today I should have gone for it. And that's a wrap. And so, my friends, all that remains is for me to say, have a wonderful week. Have a blessed week. I am actually on annual leave this week. Yay, time off. Anyway, God bless you, my friends, and take care.